Are you interested in the 900 MHz amateur radio band but have no idea how to get started? Need help selecting a radio or perhaps a transverter? Don't know what a transverter is? Maybe you need repeater information or need help programming your radio? Well, you're in the right place. I'll show you how. Let's get started. I got the idea of making a video like this due to my W6AER website and its traffic that it gets on the 900 MHz page. And this page actually gets more traffic than any other page on my website. Additionally, I also get a lot of questions about 900 MHz via email, so I felt it was only appropriate to update the website content, and while I was at it, I figured I'll do a video. So here we are. There are many ways to get on 900 MHz. Some cheaper than others, some are easier than others, and I don't claim to be an expert in the area, but I'll share what I've learned, what I now know, and what I've used in the past, as well as why I picked it. Hardware, as you may have noticed, is very limited on this band, as are repeaters at this point, and I think many are just scared due to the lack of information out there to get started on 900 MHz. I am hoping to change this a bit here. That's why I decided to do a video. I would love to see more activity on this highly underutilized band. So let's maybe get started with a little background on 900 MHz. The 900 MHz band is also known as the 33 centimeter band, so you'll see it referred to interchangeably. Basically, the 902 MHz to 928 MHz range has been allocated to the US hams on the secondary basis. Many other countries also have this band available to them, at least to some degree, if not fully. So I mentioned secondary basis. Secondary basis means we have to accept interference from other sources as hams, since we are not the primary users of the band. For me, this would be from local utility companies, meaning I am a secondary user, they would be primary, and around here they appear to be mostly used by smart meters, amongst other smart technologies. All you need is a technician ham radio license here in the US, and you are good to go. You don't need to be a general or extra class to operate here, so if you're licensed at all, there's a good chance you're likely ready to rock. The propagation is very similar to that of the 440, also known as the 70 centimeter band. In fact, some people think it's better depending on where you operate and how you operate. This is due to different absorption patterns and paths the signal takes, and I tend to agree to at least some degree. The band is widely used for experimentation. There is even an ATV, also known as amateur television, or ham TV as some call it, on this band, as well as on the 70 centimeter and 1.2 gigahertz bands. So this would be one of the three bands utilized by ATV. You will also see some traffic on different bands, but these are the three primary ones. If you're interested in this topic, let me know in the comments below, as I'm looking to test out my amateur television capabilities on my newly acquired ICOM IC905, so I may just do a video on that as well. As a side note, at one point I was pretty active on analog ATV. The repeaters, depending on where you live, you may find a -12 MHz or likely a -25 MHz split or offset. Simplex frequency spacing in the US is 12.5 kHz. Let's talk about the 900 MHz hardware. As far as hardware, there are many ways you can go about it. Basically, you can build or modify existing hardware, or you can get something that can be reprogrammed or is more on the plug-and-play end of the spectrum. This includes many units, though few are out there, specifically built for this band. I went the easy way about it at times, but as I mentioned, I've done both. One way involves using commercial gear and complicated programming setup, at least for the beginner. Some of the commercial equipment used on 900 MHz is often retired and in many cases also modified. One example is amplifiers from cell phone providers, and another is older Motorola or similar radios of various brands from different businesses and government agencies, though you'll find that most of these are going to be branded Motorola. That's just what most agencies choose to use due to their durability and quality. The following is a list of hardware that I'm going to go through, which is currently still around, still easy to deal with, and may or may not be available to you in your area. The Alinco DJ G29T is an example of this. This unit was built for the ham radio market, but is no longer manufactured, sadly. They come up on eBay sometimes, though I expect to pay a pretty penny, and it's a very nice unit. And the RT Systems programming software for this unit, as well as some other units I will mention here, works really well. I used to own one of these units, and it served me well, and frankly I regret selling it. Of course, we have to mention Down East microwave transverters. These are single sideband and CW capable, also in addition to FM. You can also do digital modes on this, such as FT8 if you like. Keep your eye on eBay for these as well. To get everyone up to speed, let's talk about what a transverter is for a second. Basically, these are devices which allow you to use an existing radio in one frequency range on another frequency range. Therefore, a transverter to be used, you will need another radio, or a radio rather, generally something with a 10 meter capability, so around 28-29 megahertz is good. With that, you'll be able to control the transverter. Basically, the transverter shifts the higher frequencies to something lower and more manageable by many. In case of the ones with interface with 10 meter rigs or an HF rig, the bottom line is you cannot use the transverter as a standalone, meaning you'll need some way of controlling it, and essentially all it is a frequency shifter, if you will, except it works both ways, transmit and receive. As a side note, this is very similar to what goes on with satellite TV receivers, where the LNB, or the low noise block down converter, that's the little component on the front of the dish, takes the usually gigahertz range signal and moves it to lower frequency where electronics can handle it more easily. Transverters essentially, if you oversimplify the idea, do this but also have transmit capability. Q5 signal transverters are also great, and I currently own one. This is my primary transverter. Mine handles not only the 33 centimeter band but also 4 additional bands. Makes it a lot easier to operate, much less wiring and space required, and it's just nice to have all in one. These also do single sideband and CW, and in my opinion, this is by far the best way to do this. Meaning, this is the best way to get on single sideband and CW or digital modes if you're trying to do really weak signal work. And technically, it might be the only way to do this. The 5-band model interfaces with my 6000 series Flex radio. This also gives me a lot of the Flex radio's smart SDR features, such as full waterfall and very easy to use software. Much easier to spot colors and fine-tuning settings on the fly. So therefore, visuals are everything when it comes to hunting signals, at least in my opinion. The GE 900 MHz MPA and MTL portables are also a very good option. Never owned one, but they were popular at one time and I heard very good things about them. There are also the Kenwood TK981 MHz radios, and this is what I currently use for my FM rig in addition to my Q5 signal transverter. Though as I had mentioned, I own quite a few varieties over the years. The Kenwood TK481 900 MHz radios are also a great option. You can often find both Kenwood radios come up on eBay and electronics flea markets if you have one in your area. Now for Motorola. The Motorola MCS 2000 mobile 900 MHz version radios are also wonderful. This was my previous FM rig. I could hit the repeater across the bay with it, about 20 miles or so away from my place, and this put out about 30 watts of power, which was probably a little more than it needed to for hitting the repeater. It did not work well with the mountains around me though, so line of sight is definitely the best way to go. The Motorola MTS 2000 900 MHz handheld, which I also owned, I told you I had a lot of radios, was a nice unit as well, but sadly got very little use due to the lack of local activity at that time, and it had very limited range due to a small antenna and only a few watts of power, I believe 5 watts, so you couldn't do too much with it locally. The Motorola Professional Series 9250, or the MTX 9250, and the Motorola GTX 900 portables and mobiles are also loved and used by many, though I can't personally speak for them, as believe it or not, I never owned one. There might be a few others which I may have missed, so if I did, please leave a comment below, and maybe I'll do an update to this video at some point. Basically, with minor exceptions, your choices will come down to Motorola versus Kenwood, or the Alinco if you can still find one, and those will be the easiest to program. All are good picks, but I decided to go with the Motorola route initially after talking to people and hearing, how they sound for myself. And at least at first, and then I switched to Kenwood, which I only did because it came up for sale and much easier to program, so it made it a lot simpler for me to go about reprogramming it when I needed to. For single sideband and CW, there is no good substitute other than a transverter. I overall still feel that the Motorola units sound better. When it comes to speakers and clarity, I'd say they're the clear winner. If you ever watched Cops or similar shows in the past, you heard Motorola radios, so that gives you an idea. Keep in mind that since there's a lot of cell phone activity on or near these frequencies, many times surplus cell phone tower gear commonly found on eBay can be repurposed. This includes amplifiers, antennas of course, and a bunch of other things. It's a gold mine out there if you know where to look and you know what you're looking for. Many times on eBay, there will be items listed where the person selling it doesn't really even know what they have. So you have to look carefully and do a little homework. So let's talk about the 900 megahertz programming and software. I already talked about this a bit, but to program the Alinco units, as I'd mentioned, it's extremely easy, but you'll have to find the radio first, so that might not be so easy. The radios I had talked about cover the 900 megahertz band as well as the 225 megahertz band. So if you see one, be ready to pay a pretty penny for a used one. Personally, I think it was a mistake to discontinue this model as demand is still clearly there. The Kenwood units are also easy to program, as the Alinco radios, they actually already have ready-to-use software available for the Kenwood as well as aftermarket ones. Unlike many Motorola and GE radios, but that's another topic, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. To program the Down East microwave or the Q5 signal units, which are very similar, there is really nothing to them. In fact, the setup is more on the HF radio end, which is to be used as the quote-unquote interface. This can vary a bit, but they're easy to figure out, very easy to use, and once you set it up, there's nothing else you need to really worry about. First time might be tricky, but don't let that scare you. Since they are transverters, you can use your existing HF radio, as I'd mentioned, and you'll be using your familiar HF radio controls. Depending on your setup, you might even get a waterfall, which if you can, go for it. That's definitely worth the extra money. To program a Motorola unit, you will need both hardware and software. And when I say hardware, I don't mean a cable like in the other instances. I'm talking about specialized programming cables. This is not true for all the units, and especially not some of the newer ones, but anything going back a few years will need one. I have not seen 900 megahertz radios which take SD card for programming, at least at the time of making this video. Hopefully that will be something in the future, or maybe another system that is not so complicated. And when I say complicated, I mean the older Motorola gear, the hardware, which includes a cable, will likely also need a specialized box. And those are now sometimes integrated units where they actually shrunk the electronics into the plug itself, but they used to be referred to as RIB boxes, RIB. eBay is full of them. They're pretty much all about the same. Some are USB connected, some are serial. The original ones will obviously be serial. Both will do the job. The original units will cost more usually and are significantly larger too. The clones are fine, and the USB versions are also fine. I tried all three. All three did the job. You can also make your own, and there's a lot of information on forums. I'll go over these shortly. The Motorola MTS2000 is capable of 902 to 928 megahertz by hex editing the MTSC ODB file, and this can be done with some searching on the internet to find software which is able to adjust it so that you can set the band limits. The radio was initially designed for slightly different frequencies, but it can be modified using a software hack. This is the same for the MCS, where you edit the mcsx.odb file. The MCX is the portable version. The software for programming both is very similar, and there's a lot of information on the BetLabs forum on this topic, so I will not repeat it here. You can find the BetLabs forum right here. I'll put a link, and I also will have it below. There are many free hex editors available out there, and that's what you'll need to do to adjust the above. And they will all likely work fine. You can find them on Windows, Mac, Linux, doesn't matter. Just to be sure to back up your original file before editing and follow the steps as instructed so you don't have any problems. If you have never used a hex editor before, you can do this under a minute easily, and it's really not rocket science. Many great videos out there too on hex editing. I should mention that your Windows may not work too well or at all with some of these older Motorola software and therefore hardware. I got some of the older programming software to work under Windows XP, but you can grab an old junker as I did and throw an OS on there and you should have no issues. Virtual machines, meaning running the software as an emulator, are hit and miss. I've tried several different ones and I run into timeouts and latency issues with some of the cables that I've tried, though they tend to do better with serial cables. In many cases, you also need a computer with a serial cable because of that. USB to serial adapters are also hit and miss. They're not all created equal, and be careful with certain chipsets. As far as the MCS 2000, I've owned several of these, Model 2 and 3, and they are all rock solid. The Model 3 with the 30 to 35 watts out is likely the best bet in this line. It sounds the best from all of them, and many consider it a must-have for the shack or the car. With an external speaker like I've used it, it's even better. And you can get matching Motorola speakers on eBay for around $20 or so. Sometimes you'll even find a bundle online, for example, like I said, eBay, and that would include usually everything you need to get started minus the antenna and maybe the power supply, but besides that you should be ready to go. The Kenwood units are a lot easier to program, though as I had mentioned, there are some other drawbacks. An important side note for Motorola buyers. When looking for a Motorola radio, make sure you look up the exact model and check against a cheat sheet on the internet. Here's what I mean. In many cases, you are looking for the letter W in the number in the back. Make sure that it's 900 MHz capable, and this is usually an indicator that it is. Might not be the exact range of 900 MHz that it's programmed for, but it will do it. This could vary model by model a little bit, so make sure you read up on it. But I do remember when I was hunting for Motorola radios on electronics flea markets and eBay, I was always looking for this W. Others will have their own systems, so read up on it. I know a few folks who've gotten 800 MHz versions of the radio, and these mostly cannot be modified for 900 MHz operations, though again, it varies model by model. I've owned the MCS 2000 and the MTS 2000, as I'd mentioned, MTS being the portable. For both of these, you need to make sure you purchase the 900 MHz capable version. They all look exactly the same, and the non-900 MHz version units, you'll have to take out the battery to read the label or look at the label in the back. To program the Kenwood radios, the situation is similar. For information on these Kenwood units, visit the Kenwood 900 MHz pages. I'll list them here, and also I'll have it below the video with all the other links I mentioned. This website is amazing, and I always hear good things about these units, and my experience has also been very positive. It really is a flip of a coin when it comes to Motorola versus Kenwood, in many cases depending on your intended usage, preferences, and your technical ability, and frankly how much you're willing to tinker with it. For GE units, your best bet is to search online, as websites seem to come and go. I don't have a specific one to recommend, frankly. There's also a lot of repeater programming information out there on using these units as a repeater, as well as Motorola units. These are the two most commonly used radios that people build repeaters with. Let's cover the 900 MHz frequencies to know and avoid. Please be aware that the 900 MHz band is not exclusive to hams. And as I had mentioned, we are the secondary users, meaning you may encounter wireless phones, such as cordless phones, which are still on the 900 MHz, as well as wireless internet and utilities and so on, as I had mentioned. Smart meters can also make quite a lot of noise here, if you will. The frequency ranges to avoid or at least keep an eye on can be viewed at this link, and I will leave that below. Depending on where you live and who you ask, the national calling frequencies are as follows. 902.1 MHz is usually the CW single sideband calling. 903.1 MHz is generally considered the alternate. 902.5 MHz is commonly used FM calling, and the 906.5 MHz is also listed as FM calling, but it's mostly retired by now, is my understanding. And 927.6 MHz is also commonly used as FM calling. So check around your neighborhood and see what frequency most people are operating on and what their preferred calling frequencies are for the area. There is a lot of contradictory information online. In my area, the last is the most used. Let's talk about 900 megahertz antennas, amplifiers, and more. There are a ton of 900 megahertz antennas around to be modified or even ready to purchase from your favorite ham radio antenna manufacturer, such as Comet and Diamond being the two main ones I can think of. Keep in mind surplus cell phone gear is just as good and sometimes actually even better. As for amplifiers, there are a few out there that are ready to cover the frequency ranges, but you can always modify one yourself. There's a ton of info on this. As far as modifications, you can find a lot of information on forums, and eBay or your local swap meet is your friend when it comes to obtaining one. You may need to add a relay for transmit-receive switching on many of these units. Motorola Downeast Microwave Q5 signal and a local ham Jim W6PQL all have ready-to-go 33 centimeter amps available. It will cost a little more, but you won't have to do any wiring, any special switching. For the most part, you'll be ready to get going within an hour. You can visit their websites for more information. Again, I'll leave it below. For the most complete information that you can find on modifying radios and just the 900 megahertz band in general, betboard.betlabs.com is your best bet. Has everything you need to know? Just look around. If you can't find it here, it likely doesn't exist. Also, be sure to visit Downeast Microwave Transverters if you want to do weak signal work via digital like FT8, single sideband, or CW. Of course, you can still use these transverters for FM work too. Q5 signal is basically just like Downeast Microwave and offers transverters, some of which, as I had mentioned, work on multiple bands all in one unit. And this can save you a lot of time and really simplify your life for those who need multiple transverters like myself. KB9 MWR's website also has great modification information, tons of links, and with further research you can do. And here's the link below, again also in the bottom. The MCS 2000 Blogspot has ton of information as well on specific models, and the link is below. The Northern California 900 MHz repeater system, NC9RS, can also be a great resource. If you know of any more links, please drop it in the comments section below to help your fellow amateur radio operators out, as well as myself, as I might not even know about this as well. Thank you for watching. Please check out some of the recommended videos on related content, and let me know what else you might be interested in seeing in the future below. And as we say, 7-3 and good DX. Until the next video, this is Lucas, W6AER.